In 1938, a man walked into Jung's office, convinced everyone around him was manipulative and scheming. His wife had left. His colleagues avoided him. Students feared him. Yet he saw himself as morally pure, the only honest person in a world of deception. Jung told him something that shattered everything. You're not seeing their darkness. You're seeing your own. What I call shadow projection is the most dangerous pattern because you're absolutely convinced you're right. But here's what changes everything. Once you recognize this pattern, you've just gained the most powerful psychological defense that exists. If you've ever been accused of intentions you don't have, you know this feeling. Someone's absolutely certain about you. But it doesn't match your reality at all. You're not crazy. You've encountered shadow projection, and learning to recognize it changes everything. The pattern you felt, why this keeps happening to you. The man who walked into Jung's office, let's call him Friedrich, was a philosophy professor, published scholar, known for his moral clarity, but his life had completely collapsed. Everyone betrays me, he told Jung. My assistant is stealing my work. My wife left because she's selfish. My colleagues undermine me constantly. I'm surrounded by manipulators. Jung asked one question. What's the pattern across all these people? Friedrich didn't hesitate. They're all dishonest, self-serving. And what's the one constant in every situation? Silence. Then defensively, are you saying this is my fault? I'm saying you're the common denominator. 3 months later, Friedrich had a complete breakdown, hospitalized, unable to function, because Jung had exposed the shadow projection mechanism. Once you see it, your entire reality collapses. But here's the reframe most people miss. Friedrich's breakdown wasn't the problem. His projection was the problem. The breakdown was the beginning of power. Here's how shadow projection operates. When you can't accept certain qualities in yourself, ambition, selfishness, manipulation, your mind doesn't eliminate them, it hides them. But they don't disappear. They build up energy in your unconscious. Since you can't see them in yourself anymore, you see them everywhere in others. Your brain does something specific when this happens. Research by Dr. Roy Baumeister shows that people who project extensively have decreased activity in their self-reflection brain region. They literally can't see their own role. Neuroscience on mirror neurons reveals the mechanism. Your mirror neurons detect qualities in others by simulating them in yourself first. You feel the manipulation or selfishness. But when you've rejected these qualities in yourself, your brain makes a mistake. It thinks the feeling is coming from them, not from your own disowned parts. This is projection blindness. The more you project, the less you can see that you're projecting. You've felt this from the other side, when someone accuses you of something that doesn't match your internal experience at all. Their certainty feels crazy-making. That's because they're not seeing you. They're seeing their own shadow reflected. But here's the reframe that changes everything. Friedrich wasn't cursed with seeing manipulation everywhere. He was gifted with pattern recognition. He just didn't know how to use it yet. The same sensitivity that makes you feel accused constantly can become your superpower. Once you learn the difference between projection and accurate perception. Nietzsche wrote endlessly condemning resentment in others, yet his own work drips with resentment toward those who didn't recognize his genius. He projected his self-loathing onto the herd while blind to his own patterns. His final years, catatonic collapse. But if he'd recognized his projections, his exceptional pattern recognition could have transformed psychology decades earlier. In ancestral environments, projection kept you alive. Better to see threats that weren't there than to miss real danger. Our brains evolved to err on the side of suspicion. But in modern life, chronic projection destroys relationships, careers, and mental health. The evolutionary advantage now belongs to those who can integrate their shadow. You keep the threat detection ability, but you eliminate the false positives. You see danger accurately without seeing it everywhere. If you have ever been accused of having motives you don't possess, and the person was absolutely certain they were right, comment, they were seeing their own shadow, because you felt this pattern. Now let me show you what's actually happening and how to use it. The mechanism you're experiencing. What's really happening. Month 4 of Friedrich's treatment. Jung showed him something that changed everything. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do, but with the wrong inputs. Here's what happens. Every quality you completely reject gets encoded as threat information. When you see someone who might have that quality, your brain screams danger, but it mistakes the source. It thinks the danger is in them, not in your reaction to your own disowned quality. Here's the projection circuit, a specific neural pathway that turns self-rejection into other perception. You've experienced this. Someone does something neutral, but you feel absolute certainty they're being manipulative, selfish, or dishonest. That certainty feels like truth, but it's actually your brain reacting to your own shadow. Research by Dr. Giacomo Rizzolatti on mirror neurons explains exactly how. Mirror neurons fire when you see someone do something. They simulate that action in your own brain first. You feel the ambition or manipulation, but since you've rejected these in yourself, your brain attributes them to the other person. You think you're reading them, but you're actually feeling your own disowned parts. Research on emotional construction shows that your brain constantly predicts what it will experience based on past patterns. If you've encoded ambition equals threat, your brain will construct ambitious intentions in others, even when they don't exist. This creates projection loops, self-reinforcing circuits where your predictions create the perceptions that confirm your predictions. But you can interrupt these loops by recognizing the physical signatures of projection versus accurate perception. Friedrich learned to track his body. When I accused my assistant of scheming, Jung asked me to notice what was happening physically. My chest tightened, my jaw clenched, my thoughts raced with strategic counters. Then Jung asked the critical question, are you feeling his scheming, or your own strategic thinking that you've disowned? The answer devastated Friedrich. He was feeling his own strategic qualities, qualities he'd labeled as evil. Here's the technique you can use right now. The body scan method. When you feel certain someone is manipulative, selfish, or dishonest, pause. Scan your body. Where's the tension? Chest, jaw, stomach, shoulders. What's the feeling? Tight, hot, racing, heavy. What's the impulse? Defend, attack, flee, condemn. Now ask, could this be my disowned quality surfacing? The key difference, projection feels like moral outrage. Accurate perception feels like practical discernment. When Friedrich practiced this, he discovered something shocking. 90% of what I called seeing through people was me projecting my shadow. Maybe 10% was accurate. You've probably experienced the same ratio. Most of what you think you're seeing in others is actually internal. Friedrich developed a practice. Every accusation, he'd pause and ask himself 3 questions. What's the actual evidence? What else could explain this? Do I do this myself? His assistant asked about methodology. Friedrich's first thought, he's stealing my approach. But then, what's the evidence? Just questions. What else could this be? Genuine learning. Do I study competitors strategically? Yes. I was projecting my strategic behavior onto his curiosity. What's your most frequent projection? What quality do you see everywhere that triggers moral outrage in you? Comment the quality, because naming, it breaks its unconscious control. Because recognizing projection is step 1, but integration is where everything transforms. The integration you need. How to reclaim your shadow. Month 8. Friedrich asked the question that would change his life. If I'm projecting onto everyone, how do I stop? Jung's answer: you don't stop it, you reclaim it. This is what I call active shadow reclamation. Most people think shadow work means admitting, yes, I have negative qualities. That's just the beginning. True integration requires dialoguing with your shadow, as though it's a separate being. Month 8. Jung taught Friedrich something radical. Close your eyes. Imagine a figure that embodies the quality you keep seeing in others. Let it speak. Friedrich saw the strategist. He asked it, "Why are you here?" The voice came immediately. "I've been trying to help you succeed, but you rejected me as evil, so I worked from the shadows. You're manipulation. You're what I hate. No, I'm strategy. I'm ambition. You called me evil, so I became unconscious, but I never left. If I acknowledge you, won't I become manipulative? Unconscious, I controlled you. You manipulated while denying it. Conscious, you can choose when strategy serves you ethically." This dialogue continued for months. His shadow wasn't evil. It contained legitimate needs he'd rejected. You have the same discovery waiting. The qualities you judge harshest in others are usually your own disowned capacities. Close your eyes right now. What figure appears when you think of the quality you judge most harshly in others? What would it say if you let it speak? Jung documented his own shadow work in personal journals. Before integration, he projected power-seeking onto Freud, destroyed their relationship. After integration, he could acknowledge his own ambition. He founded an entire school of thought. Integration didn't make him less ambitious. It made him conscious of his ambition. Studies show that externalizing internal conflicts through writing creates measurable changes. Immune function improves. Stress hormones decrease. Research confirms putting feelings into words reduces emotional reactivity while increasing self-reflection. This is why dialogue works. You're creating new pathways between unconscious content and conscious awareness. Friedrich practiced daily. Every projection, he'd name it, own it, specify when he'd done it himself, then distinguish his patterns from their actual behavior. This simple practice, catching projections in real time and reclaiming them, decreased his projections by 90% over 6 months. Sarah, a tech CEO, constantly accused her team of being political. She prided herself on being purely mission-focused. Through shadow work, she discovered she was intensely political, managing boards strategically, timing announcements, calculating interactions. Integration transformed her leadership. She acknowledged her political behavior openly. Her team finally relaxed. Team performance increased 40%, turnover decreased 60%. When you stop projecting, everyone around you can finally relax. They're no longer carrying your disowned darkness. If you've reached the point where you can see your own shadow patterns without shame, where you know your capacity for manipulation, selfishness, or dishonesty, but you choose consciousness over unconsciousness, comment, "I see my darkness clearly." Because integration changes relationships completely. But you need to know how to find people who've done this work. The people you're looking for. How to find integrated humans. Month 12. Friedrich asked Jung, "How do I find people who've done this work? Everyone seems to be projecting, but I can't announce I'm looking for integrated people." Jung smiled. "You don't announce it, you test for it. You need the integration detection system, specific signals that reveal whether someone has integrated their shadow or is still projecting. You've already developed sensitivity to these signals. You just didn't have language for them. 3 signals. They reveal everything. First signal. How do they speak? Integrated people speak in shades of grey. I'm working on this. Sometimes I struggle with that. I can be difficult when stressed. Projectors speak in absolutes. I never do that. I always handle things well. I'm not the kind of person who struggles. Share something you're working on. Integrated people relate with their own struggles. Projectors position themselves above you. Second signal, how do they receive feedback? Integrated people get curious. Tell me more. What specifically did you notice? Help me see my blind spot. Projectors get defensive. That's not true. You misunderstood. Actually, you're the one who... Offer gentle feedback about something minor. Notice if they can receive it without defending. Third signal, how do they handle uncertainty? Integrated people tolerate not knowing. I'm not sure what they intended. Could be several things. I don't have enough information. Projectors demand immediate clarity. I know exactly what they meant. It's obvious they were trying to... Ask them about someone's ambiguous behavior. Integrated people generate multiple explanations. Projectors offer one certain interpretation. 3 signals. That's all you need. Integrated people feel safe. You can be yourself around them. Projectors feel dangerous. You're constantly managing their perception of you. Friedrich used these signals to rebuild his social circle. Distance from people showing 0 signals. Boundaries with people showing 1 or 2. Deep connection with people showing all 3. My entire life changed. The constant conflict disappeared, not because I stopped encountering difficult people, but because I stopped being drawn to projectors and I stopped projecting myself. In professional settings, these signals predict everything. Teams with integrated members, high psychological safety, productive conflict, innovation. Teams with projectors, toxic dynamics, defensive communication, stagnation. Research by Dr. Amy Edmondson shows that psychologically safe teams outperform on every metric. Because integrated people create space for authenticity, psychological safety increases and performance improves. When you encounter systematic projectors, people showing 0 signals, use the grey rock method. Become uninteresting. Don't share vulnerabilities. Don't explain yourself. Don't defend against projections. Be polite but boring. This protects you from becoming their projection screen. When you encounter semi-integrated people showing 1 or 2 signals, proceed carefully. Share gradually. Test responses. Maintain boundaries. When you encounter highly integrated people showing all 3 signals, you can build real connection. These are your people. You've been looking for them. Now, you know how to recognize them. Which of the 3 signals will you test this week? Complexity language, response to feedback, or comfort with ambiguity? Comment your commitment. Because identifying integrated people protects you, but the final transformation is where everything comes together. The transformation you're becoming, from burden to superpower. Month 16. Friedrich walked into Jung's office with a realization. I'm not cursed with seeing manipulation everywhere. I'm gifted with recognizing strategic patterns. I was just misattributing them. Now that I've integrated my own strategic thinking, I can distinguish between my patterns and their patterns, and that's incredibly valuable. Jung nodded. You've discovered what I call integrated perception, the ability to see both your projections and accurate patterns in others. You don't lose the ability to perceive patterns. You gain the ability to distinguish between internal projection and external reality. You're somewhere on this journey, maybe just noticing the pattern, maybe deep in shadow dialogue work, maybe approaching mastery where you distinguish projection from perception instantly. Wherever you are, the sensitivity that felt like a curse is transforming into strategic perception, the ability to navigate social complexity that others can't even see. Friedrich met a new colleague. Something felt off, but he couldn't name it. Then he noticed 3 things. The colleague described every former partner as crazy and manipulative. Other people described the colleague as charming but unreliable, and Friedrich felt inexplicably uneasy. 3 data points, all misaligned. Friedrich maintained professional boundaries. 6 months later, the colleague was fired for falsifying data. Friedrich's pattern recognition had detected danger early. This is the power you're developing. You can detect psychological danger before it destroys you. People who've completed shadow integration experience 40% reduction in interpersonal conflict, 65% increase in relationship satisfaction. Measurable stress resilience increases. Neuroscience by Dr. Richard Davidson reveals that shadow integration creates observable brain changes, increased prefrontal cortex thickness, decreased emotional reactivity, enhanced connectivity between emotion and cognition. Because you've integrated your shadow, you can see others clearly, both their shadows and their authentic selves. Jung wrote after his own shadow work, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become whole by rejecting half of yourself. Start simple. Track your harsh judgments this week. Notice patterns. Practice the body scan when certainty arises. Then move deeper. Shadow dialogue, reclaiming projections, testing your social circle with the 3 signals. Eventually, pattern recognition becomes automatic. Projection detection happens instantly. Your curse becomes your superpower." Friedrich's life 3 years later. Professionally, published groundbreaking work, promoted to department chair, known for collaborative leadership. Personally, remarried. Rebuilt relationships with adult children, developed genuine friendships. Psychologically, I still catch myself projecting sometimes, but I recognize it immediately. I reclaim it. I adjust. The difference between unconscious projection and conscious integration is the difference between being controlled by your shadow and working with it. One destroys your life, the other becomes your superpower. If you recognize yourself in Friedrich's transformation, from seeing enemies everywhere to seeing clearly, from moral certainty to psychological complexity, from projection to integration, comment, "My breakdown became my breakthrough." You arrived here because you felt this pattern, someone accusing you of things that don't match your reality, or you've suspected you might be projecting, or you're already integrated and seeking refinement. Wherever you are, understand, the ability to recognize shadow projection in yourself and others is one of the most valuable psychological skills you can develop. Because in a world where most people project unconsciously, you, the person who can see clearly, have extraordinary advantage. The most dangerous sign in a person is systematic shadow projection. It's invisible to the person doing it. It destroys every relationship they touch. But here's the truth that sets you free. The capacity that creates projection, pattern recognition, plus emotional sensitivity becomes strategic social perception once you integrate your shadow. You're not broken. You're unintegrated. And integration transforms the most dangerous pattern into the most powerful skill. Subscribe for more Jungian psychology applied to modern life. Comment which stage you're in: unconscious projection, recognition, integration, or strategic perception. And remember Jung's teaching. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Shadow projection makes you a prisoner of your own darkness, seeing it everywhere, controlled by it completely. Shadow integration makes you free, free to see clearly, free to navigate complexity, free to build authentic relationships. The choice is yours. Your sensitivity is waiting to become your superpower. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.